that we have to make plans for extreme action, but like I said, they're not going to give it to us, even if Bernie is elected.
Baird is so extreme, he speaks as if it's common knowledge Sanders will, quote, abolish landlords, unquote, and even compares Sanders' revolution to the Russian Revolution of 1917. He seems to think that even though he'd like less bloodshed, armed struggle is inevitable.
After we abolish landlords, we don't have to kill them. You know what I'm saying? that's my feeling. I think that's damaging to the soul. But there you go, Micah. There were plenty of excesses in 1917 that I would hope to avoid.
But like,
I admire it.
I'm very, like I said, I'm very black and white. I see things in very binary terms, and I just see a big clash happening, and it's going to be a power struggle. And power struggles are not nice. You don't talk your way out of them.
No,
it's a strong, it's the law of the jungle.
Right. I think.
So how do you jungle up?
I think it goes back again for me. It's like labor. I think that's a big source of power for us.
Hey, Mike with the
and to try to gain as much leverage and power.
Are you Miss Sandra?
In the short time that we have before.
Take care. 1917 Redux.
Right, because it's really incredible. Lenin didn't have the internet. They weren't. They were a peasant society. It was like, so, I would hope that that we would, we'd be doing a bunch of prep work, right, before the capitalists got hip to what we were doing, I guess. That's kind of the best. I'm not excited about the prospect of armed struggle. So that's.
But don't you see it? Do you see it as inevitable or not?
I see it as possible.
Huh?
I see it as possible.
Yeah.
You do?
Oh yeah.
I just never want to kill anybody.
You just reminded me of.
Scares me a lot. So,
but aren't in building this movement? Are we moving it further along that way? Is that where we're going with it?
I would say most people in the movement are in it to avoid going that far, and there's a wing of the movement that sees that as the
inevitable.
Yeah.
Baird speaks of nationalizing things like Facebook and Google before diving into his talk of violence towards people's property.
And the first time in my life, maybe even, probably most of our lives in American history, we're going to have, if we have Bernie in the White House, we're going to have a real plan for dual power, where we'll have the presidency and we'll have a mass movement right alongside it that's going to be institutionalized and supported, and I'd like to participate. That's part of it. Is once we break up Google, break up YouTube, break up Facebook, for me, nationalize these things,
right,
then that'd be a huge step forward as far as education, right, and that stuff goes.
So, how does Bernie really plan to do it, though? So I get all that, and now, but he's planning to fund all his programs from them. So how are they? They're not just going to roll over and die and say, "Here's my money, redistribute it."
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's going to take. That's when we get into the really, when we get into really nuts and bolts stuff. That's what I struggle with thinking about is, my only answer is kind of vague is just having, the movement and having and snowballing that movement and thinking more explicit, like maybe thinking less about thinking less about persuading people and more about mobilizing the people we already have. So that's why I emphasize mobilizing the people that are already with us instead of persuading people who might need persuading, because at the end of the day, these people, like reactionaries, and as you go further right, reactionaries, and fascists.
But you're going to have a clash.
Right. Well, these people are motivated by fear. And if we mobilize and if we make a show of force and show that, like, hey, we're very, very strong and we've put in work and we're very powerful now, I think you'll have a good many people who are going to back down off of it, who are going to be so afraid that they're going to back down off that position.
So do you mean like armed resistance?
I hope. I mean, I don't think we're there yet, and I hope not. But just like a militant labor movement that's willing to, strike, and if necessary, just destroy property and things like that. That would be my escalation, right? We would need a federal government and a labor movement that is working together to strip power away from capitalists and preferably directing that violence towards property. At the end of the day, I think this stuff is going to come out through praxis, through the work, and it's hard for me to talk about it in the moment we live in, because I think China today is not what Mao envisioned, right? It was through the praxis of billions of Chinese people, doing the work to create the China today, and so we're never gonna. I think a lot of these answers are gonna come through praxis. We're gonna try things aren't gonna work, we're gonna move on to the next thing, and we're gonna try to be as conscious and intentional about those things, but when you get into a certain level of detail and depth, it's like that's kind of my cop out, is like it comes through the work, the answers come through the work. This is it. I mean, this is the beginning. The campaign is, we're consciously all the time. This is what we're saying all the time on this campaign is, after South Carolina, after the primaries, after the general, this doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. This is and that was Bernie's promise. He said, this isn't Obama 2008 where a massive movement got him elected, and then he said, all right, thanks y'all, goodbye, it's over now. Bernie said that the only way that we're gonna succeed, the only way we're gonna live is if we have this mass movement going after the election.
Taylor seems quite confident that Sanders would endorse extreme action.
If, God forbid, he should lose, can't even think of that. Do you think he'll be on board to join forces with the rest of us and really make, we need a revolution, don't we?
He has a history of protest, and, that's what makes him so attractive to a lot of the younger people who are fed up with bureaucracy, is that Bernie has been out there standing on the picket lines and doing the uncomfortable stuff. And I absolutely think that he would endorse that kind of action because, sometimes that's what you got to do to get it done.
As we continue to expose radicals inside the Sanders campaign, the question must be asked, are these people representative of the campaign or not? If not, shouldn't the campaign disavow these workers? Or are they the true face of the campaign and the candidate himself?